Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your break and you are ready for the next section of our eye exploration. Right, so let's have a look. We are busy with the human nervous system, right? So we've done all these concepts already, right? And now we're going to move further with the eye. We're busy with the eye. So as you remember in the previous sections, we did the structure of the eye, we did accommodation of the eye, and now we're going to look at pupillary mechanism. Now, pupillary mechanism is exactly what it says. It's the pupil, right? That black hole in your eye, right? If you look at this picture here, you can see it becomes bigger and smaller, right? That is pupillary mechanism, right? And when your eyes are in bright light, your pupil will become smaller, and we call it constrict, right? And when it's in dim light, when you're in a dark room, it will dilate, right? So it becomes bigger, right? And the iris is the one that controls the amount of light, because remember, this is a hole. This pupil is a hole. It's not a muscle or anything like it. The iris here around it will control the amount of light going in. Let's have a look at how the iris is working. So people get confused between the lens and the pupillary mechanism. Think of the pupillary mechanism as the iris and the pupil, right? The iris is round. It is a circle. And a circle's got a radius, right? There's a radius. And it's circular. So those are the circular muscles. It's not the ciliary muscles. It's circular because it's in a circle. Just remember it that way. Okay. So when we are in dim light, we need big pupils. We need dilated pupils to get more light into our eyes, right? So remember that. We need a big pupil. So what happens is the radial muscles will contract. And when they contract, they become bigger and shorter, right? They become shorter. And when they are shorter, they are pulling the inside of this iris outwards. Can you see? So then the pupil becomes bigger, right? And when it becomes bigger, it will dilate, right? So the radial muscles will contract and become short and fat. The circular muscles will relax, right? Because they are antagonistic. If the one is contracting, the other one is relaxing. The pupil dilates and the amount of light entering is increased. So that is in dim light. Let's have a look at bright light. Now think, if you're in bright light, you can't have big pupils because it's bright, it's going to blind you. So you need smaller pupils, constricted pupils, right? So now what's happening is the opposite of the previous one. Your circular muscles are now contracting. And these radial muscles are now relaxing. You can see they're becoming longer. And if they become longer, they're basically pushing the inside down. Can you see? If they push that inside down, the pupil becomes smaller. So what must you remember? You must remember the circular muscles of the iris will contract, the radial muscles will relax, the pupil will constrict because you need less light in your eye. You don't need a lot of light, so it must be constricted, and the amount of light will be reduced. Right, so if you understand this process, it will be easier to study it. So try and understand really what each one is doing and why the pupil is bigger and smaller. Let's go on. Now we found in the previous exams that learners struggle with the difference between accommodation and pupillary mechanism, right? So maybe this table is a good idea just to remember what the differences are. Firstly, you must always look at the stimulus. For accommodation, it's a change in the distance of the object from the eye, right? So it's near or far. But for pupillary mechanism, it's all about the light intensity. Parts involved with accommodation is always your lens, your suspensory ligaments, because the lens is suspended from them, and the ciliary muscle. With the pupillary mechanism, obviously the name says it all, pupil, and the pupil works with the iris, and the iris is round, so you have radial muscles and circular muscles. Main changes Obviously, the shape of the lens will change here with accommodation. It becomes less and more convex, and diameter of the pupil on this side, it will become constricted or dilated. What brings about the change? The suspensory ligaments and the ciliary muscle will bring about the change here, and the radial and the circular muscles will change the pupil size. Right. So if you know this table, I think you won't get confused. Let's look at some questions in this part. Identify part A. Where's part A? Here's part A. That's the outside of the eye, and that is the sclera. Right. B is, yeah, that can only be the lens, right? C, where is C? Where is C? There is C. This is the ciliary muscle, but if you said ciliary body, it will also be accepted, but we actually prefer ciliary muscle. Number 2, identify the process in diagram 1. So remember, process is usually either pupillary mechanism or accommodation, right? So either one of the two. So in diagram 1, you've got a big pupil and now you've got a small pupil. So what is that? Pupillary mechanism. Right, next. Name the part of the eye that's responsible for the response in diagram 1. Right, what's the part of the eye that will make your pupil smaller? That must be the iris there. Right, the little muscles in the iris. State the consequence to the person's vision if the process in diagram 2 does not occur. So, here's diagram 2. We have a flat lens, and now it becomes more convex. And when do we need more convex, more refraction? When something is nearby. When your book usually has to be nearby, right? Or when you look at close objects, right? So, when this can't happen, you won't be able to see clearly objects that are close to you. So it will become blurry, right? So near vision will be blurred. I hope you enjoyed this section of the eye. I think it's time for an ad break now, for a little break for you. Go and have some coffee, tea, and come back after the ad break. I'll see you there.